We're going to bring the meeting to order. It is 7:01. So I got to read the standard opening statement. So bear with me. So this is welcome to the Williston's DRB hybrid meeting. This is the Development Review Board meeting September 24th, 2024. My name is Scott Riley. I am the Vice Chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. Zoom attendees, please stay muted unless it is your turn to speak. We have anybody on Zoom tonight? We probably do, right? Yeah, quite a bit. Okay. For Zoom technical questions, please contact the planning staff through the Zoom chat. I'll begin by taking a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Nate?
Here.
Paul?
Present.
Lisa?
Here.
Scott Riley is here. Dave Turner?
Here.
Pete Kelly is not here. Okay. The Development Review Board of the DRB follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, also known as public hearings, like a court, pursuant to Williston's Unified Development Bylaw, the WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as the state statute, and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance for any public hearing item tonight. Does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest? No, I will be recusing myself for one of the hearings tonight, and Dave Turner will be managing that hearing, and that is DP 21-18.1, Snyder Williston Properties LLC and Riley Properties LLC. Does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? No. So there's a couple of changes, or there's one major change tonight. We have 4 items on the agenda. HP 25-01 is a certificate of appropriateness. DP 21-18.1, the Snyder Williston Properties LLC and Riley Properties LLC. DP 25-01 is a pre-app for River Cove Animal Hospital. And APP, which stands for appeal, is 25-01. The appeal, 25-01, which I know a lot of you are here for, is going to be rescheduled for the 22nd. It is not being held tonight. I'll let Melinda tell you why.
So both state law and the Williston Development Bylaw requires notice of a hearing for an application or an appeal, anything being heard by the Development Review Board. 15 days notice must be given before the hearing, and one of the means of notice is an on-site posting of an H sign within view from the public right-of-way that's clear, that's adjacent to the property for which the hearing is concerned. And so for that reason, because we got some complaints that the sign was not clearly visible from the street, we are going to continue the hearings to make sure that everybody who would like to attend the hearing and give testimony be given that opportunity. So the sign must be posted by October 7th, and the hearing will be held on October 22nd. And yeah.
So we apologize for dragging you out here tonight. If you would make sure that the sign is clearly visible on your lawn, that would be great. And we will move on to the next one. Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yep. Would you state your name? This is yes. This is not a hearing, and the hearing is not open.
Right. So my name is Christian Chorba, and I represent Donna Pedersani, and she shared with me some photos of that sign taken from various angles from her street, as well as from inside her house. To me, it was very clear that it was clearly visible. She does have a tree on her property. We certainly will accept this postponement of the hearing, but I'm just wondering if she can get some more specific direction about exactly where on her property that sign.
So I saw, thank you for saying that, I saw the pictures as well. The concern is that this hearing has enough, generates enough interest from the Williston population that if, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to show up for the hearing. Since we received a complaint or two earlier, that appears not to be the case. If you can bring the, if you could bring the notice, you know, put it on a tomato stake in the, right up by the curb, that would be great. People, then it's front and center and people can see it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay. All right, next up will be HP 25-01, Ann O'Day, the Certificate of Appropriateness. Miss O'Day, are you here? Great. Come on up, have a seat. Okay. If you would state your, well, hang on a second, we'll let some people clear the room. If you would state your name and your address, please.
Ann O'Day, 7603 Williston Road, Williston.
Welcome. Who is reading this one?
That'll be me.
Emily.
This is a request for a certificate of appropriateness at 7603 Williston Road in the additional review area of the Village Zoning District. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing garage and construct a new garage with an accessory dwelling unit. The design review is limited to the exterior design. Most of the replacement is within the existing footprint of the garage. The HAC recommendation was this application complies as proposed. The original house is known in the Sites and Structure Survey as the Bootshim House, constructed circa 1840, a typical vernacular style. The survey also lists the garage as 1840, however, there were not car garages in 1840, so that's probably an error, and based upon the photos, it definitely looks like a newer addition to the structure. The applicant is proposing, so the main house has horizontal clapboard siding, proposing vertical siding, a modern farmhouse style with black windows and a black garage door. It'll be pretty minimally visible from the road because this garage addition is to the rear of the home. And these are some sample photos of the architectural style, not the exact likeness of what this will look like. The applicant did provide floor plans and architectural drawings showing what the structure will look like in flat view. And the Historic and Design Advisory recommendation was that this complies as proposed. Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to add to that?
No.
That's probably the right answer. Any questions from the board?
Good.
The only question I have is, are the garage doors now going to be facing, like the driveway entrance?
It's gonna be in the same, facing the same way as the current garage door. It's gonna be a one-car garage, however. The one existing is a two-car. So it will be facing the same way,
Okay, thank you.
which is toward the driveway.
You mean you're not gonna reuse these garage doors?
Nate?
Nope, no questions.
An NBD.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? No questions from the audience. We're going to close this hearing at 7:12. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is DP 21-18.1 Snyder Williston Properties LLC and Riley Properties LLC. I'm going to recuse myself for this. I have a financial interest in the project. Dave Turner is going to run the hearing.
Thanks. Yeah, the first one? I got out of it for 12 years or 13 years, whatever.
I object, he doesn't have enough training.
Hey, could you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Chris Snyder with Snyder Wilson Properties LLC.
Andy,
Shelburne Road, 4076 Shelburne Road, Shelburne.
Andy Rose, Snyder Wilson Properties, Shelburne.
And who's got this for staff?
That's me. Thank you, Dave. All right. This application is from Snyder Williston Properties and Riley Properties, who request an amendment to final plans for DP 21-18, previously approved in October of 23. They're seeking to modify the footprint and architecture of the Lot 2A multifamily apartment building, also referred to as Apartment Building B throughout the staff report, in the Taft Corners zoning district. The proposed architectural changes include, well, the footprint, the facade, roof, balconies, siding, and color scheme. The applicant has also made minor changes to parking, landscaping, and lighting. Staff is recommending that the DRB take testimony and close the hearing tonight. We're recommending that you approve the application with conditions as drafted. This is the first time the DRB has reviewed this request. Previous approvals include the discretionary permit approval, growth management, and pre-application. The only advisory board that reviewed this application was the HDAC, formerly known as the HAC. All three departments also reviewed this application. All departments said that they do not have any additional comments. The fire department was issued as an actual memo. It wasn't included to save paper. It's part of the record if you'd like to see it. No comment letters were received at the time of mailout. So getting into the chapter compliance, just pretty much hit the high notes here, as many of these are pretty minor, if that's okay with you. For dimensional standards, the proposal complies. There are no changes to the, there's no minimum lot size in the zoning district. And there's no changes to the building height. No outdoor sales are proposed. And really the main point here is that the development pattern complies. They increase compliance with the chapter 41 requirements for building the building to the sidewalk and building mass. Additionally, I'll note that none of the 5 of 9 design elements that are required are changing. Moving to off-street parking and loading, the applicant has added 1 additional ADA parking space than was previously approved in the structured parking underneath the building. And there's a note here, there seemed to be a discrepancy between the narrative and the plans on how many parking spots are proposed. I think it's just a question of counting ADA spaces, so it's noted there. The applicant has also added 2 outdoor bike parking spaces, part of the amendment. This table demonstrates compliance with parking. For density, this is more of a note for the DRB. The development bylaw was amended on June 4th of 2024. It removed dwelling unit equivalent as a method of counting units, and now just counts units as dwelling units. The bylaw excerpt below this section defines what a dwelling is. DP 21-18 was approved for 276 dwelling units. The applicant is proposing 132 dwelling units between the two multifamily apartment buildings that we're looking at as part of this application. For landscaping, this complies. There's no changes to the landscaping buffers. The applicant has redesigned the landscaping with the change in the footprint of the building. Proposed changes do comply with the plant materials requirements in WDB 23.7. Street trees complies. There are no changes proposed. And then getting into design review, the main aspect of this application, the HDAC did review the application on September 3rd and recommended that the amendments comply as proposed. I have included the previous elevations above the proposed elevations for comparison. For outdoor lighting, compliance is anticipated. This is a small note. The application should include a calculation for maximum total lumen output for the entire site at final plans. There was a small change on the location of one light fixture, and they have added an additional light fixture on the north entrance to the apartment building B. The table below demonstrates pretty much full compliance with this. Staff does not anticipate any conflict with the maximum total lumen output. We just need the calculation included as part of final plans. What follows are a list of findings, conclusions, and conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. You have anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
You're good with it? Yeah. Can you just give us a brief description of what the footprint changes are?
Yeah, so maybe you could pull up the overall site plan.
One moment.
So on the overall site plan, what has changed is there's a little bit of a bend in the entrance road. And so what we have done is added a little short wing, that little piece that Andrew's going around right now, and basically taking that space. But by taking that space, it also created an architectural change to that exterior wall, so that it was not a straight wall, because previously approved, it was just a straight wall along there with I think a balcony. And so what we did is we added that bump out, and I think it does create more of a better street view when you're driving into the annex neighborhood. So that's really the site plan change.
Okay, thank you. You have any questions? No.
Snow. Is that the the road that used to sort of wind through that now is making a right-hand turn to go up?
Down by the trash building.
Yeah. So, when they're pushing snow, if we ever do get a big snowstorm again, where are they planning on going, since that seemed to be, that would have been the optimum place to push, but now you got the trash building, that little trash building sitting at the end of that little, so did that change where they're gonna shove snow at the end of the day?
So the trash building didn't change, the location was always there. It is, as you noted, right at the bottom of the driveway coming in there. So it's a great place to push snow, but it's also a great alignment for the trash truck as well.
So where was this gonna be identified, that they were gonna have a snow pile on that section? Where's the snow storage, is what I'm trying to say?
Snow storage, I think, will probably end up being as you're coming head on to that.
It'll be to
trash
the
building,
left?
It'll be on the left.
Okay,
There's a depressed area there, and then all of those parking spaces that are along the south edge snow will probably be pushed in there to the extent that they can get
Okay,
in between or not have a vehicle in there to push it through.
okay. Just curious. Everything else looks good.
Do you have any questions?
Nope.
I like the new design, the layout looks a little sharper than the other one. I thought the other one was good, but this one really catches your eye. It's like a good layout. Anybody else has anything to add? Any questions from the audience?
Just make sure that's the bump out, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Okay, I guess we're all set then. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we welcome Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Dave Turner. Trial by fire.
Yes.
All right, next up is DP 25-01. This is a pre-app for River Cove Animal Hospital. Come on up. And if you would state your name and your address, sir.
Hi, my name's Scott Homestead. I work for Krebs & Lansing Consulting Engineers at 164 Main Street in Colchester, Vermont. I do believe we have some project team members online as well.
Could you have them identify themselves?
Yeah, it would, please. It'd be Phil Latour and Jeff Clark and Jennifer Fang.
And maybe they could unmute themselves and
Say hello.
say hello.
Hi, I'm Jeff Clark with MD Architects.
Jennifer Pang with MD Architects.
My name is Phil Lader. I'm with Blue River Pet Care, who is the ownership group for River Cove Animal Hospital.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, who gets the duty on this one?
That's me.
Emily gets the duty. All right, Emily, your staff goes first.
All right, this is a request for pre-application review of a proposal to construct a 2,443 square foot addition, reconfigure access and parking. The building is currently occupied by River Cove Animal Hospital. The property is about 1 acre. It is currently used as a commercial use. No change in use is proposed. It has access onto River Cove Road, a town road. It is located in the residential zoning district where it was not subject to design review or conservation commission review. Tonight, staff recommends that the DRB take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate, and approve a set of recommendations. There are several recommendations drafted for your consideration. Some are boilerplate, others, particularly recommendation number 1, are specific to this request, and the DRB may choose to modify or add to these recommendations. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. The building, according to the lister's card, was constructed around 1968, and it has been used as a veterinary office hospital since about 1982. What follows is a history of the permit approvals. So in the 1980s, back when there was a zoning board of adjustment, there was a conditional use approved in 1981. Followed by a 1984 conditional use approval for a 372 square foot addition. That also was reviewed by the Planning Commission at the time in 1984. In 1998, there was a variance application approved to increase the number of employees from 3 to 8. And shortly after that, in 1999, a site plan approval for a 1,000 square foot addition to reconfigure parking and access. That all concluded in the year 2000 with a certificate of occupancy. And in 2021, there was a zoning administrator's opinion letter about the nature of the property that I'll go into more detail soon. Advisory boards not required to comment on this application. Interdepartmental review, Public Works and Fire commented. We do note that the fire department's plan review standards are a standard, not an ordinance, and they can only be enforced to the extent that they are noted in the bylaws and do not conflict with the bylaws. Public comment, We did not receive any letters at the time of mail out, September 29th, nor up to this evening. So the purpose of pre-application, plans are presented in an informal way to invite comment and discussion of alternatives. Pre-application is neither approved nor rejected. It doesn't create any vested rights. The DRB is writing a set of recommendations. And so when the DRB is reviewing this application, think about what information should the applicant include in their discretionary permit? What questions should be addressed in the discretionary permit? The discretionary permit phase is when something gets approved or denied with a set of findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. So you're thinking in context of what do you need for a future discretionary permit to support findings of fact and conclusions of law. Project elements, residential zoning district. We'll go into use in a moment, but in short, commercial uses are not allowed in this zoning district. The only non-residential uses permitted are childcare centers, churches, schools, and home businesses. Outdoor sales and storage is prohibited in the residential zoning district. There's none existing on this site. And the applicant should consider any current or future storage needs. Currently, there is an accessory garage. They should think about either a standalone garage or shed or an addition to house materials that are used outside. Dimensional standards, compliance is anticipated with building height and the setbacks. They are showing a recomposed parking lot to bring it out of the front yard setback. Parking is not something that is allowed in one of those setbacks. Side and rear yard setbacks are controlled by the landscape buffers, and while pedestrian ways can run parallel within those setbacks, they would still need to meet the buffer requirement, which we'll get into chapter 23 below. So vested rights, non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. This all corresponds to recommendation number 1. Commercial uses, including veterinary services, are not an allowed use in the residential zoning district. And per WDB 253, can a non-conforming use be changed? No. Any change in use or the nature or extent of use is subject to the requirements of this bylaw. So non-conforming uses can remain in operation if they go away for more than a year. The vested rights in that use also go away. And vested non-conforming uses per 253 cannot change. The bylaw does not define nature or extent. However, I provided the dictionary definitions for your reference. And then I provide a summary of variance application 98-1 and site plan approval 9900. The operations and the site have changed without the benefit of a permit. So those earlier applications reference 8 employees, where today there are 19 and 12 on duty at any one time. There's 20 parking spaces approved on the site plan. However, they currently are asking for 25 parking spaces. And these changes have been ongoing long enough that it's possible the town might not be able to pursue zoning violation enforcement. So once a zoning violation activity has been going on for 15 years or more, the town can't pursue it. However, existing conditions do not establish a vested right. So the property is vested in that 1998 zoning approval and that 2000 site plan. However, anything beyond that extent is not a vested right. What follows is a table where I summarize the applicant's narrative letter based on existing conditions and proposed conditions. One thing I forgot to note when I started reading the staff report, and to keep in mind throughout this, is the floor plans were provided after I published this report. Things in this report would be a little bit different if I had floor plans available. And when we go into the session, we can let the applicant talk about existing versus proposed conditions in terms of the narrative letter in context of the floor plans.
You didn't happen to print out the floor plans for tonight? I did see them, but
We did print them out. We can bring them over.
no.
I have one set if you need,
So,
if that's all you need.
You brought yours, you were ahead of everybody else.
Actually, you might be the only one that doesn't have them.
Okay, I did
Yeah.
see them online, I did look at them, so it's not overly critical. I was curious if everybody.
Happy to provide.
Wait,
You need
if
it?
you
It's okay.
have it
You
set,
need a copy?
It's,
we'll just use
I don't need, I can look at Dave's, it's fine.
I got,
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
It's-
use those. Okay. Save you a trip.
thanks. Okay.
Back to the staff report. Access compliance is anticipated, currently 2 curb cuts. Bylaw prefers consolidated access, they're reducing down to 1. Off-street parking and loading, compliance is also anticipated here. They're reconfiguring the lot to pull it out of the setback. The site plan is vested in 20 parking spaces. They are proposing 25. So the DRB and applicant should discuss how that increase in parking is not a change in the nature or extent of the use. Separate from the nonconformity issue, in terms of a veterinary office anywhere in town, the number of parking spaces could be 1.6 to 4 per 1,000 square feet. That's based on that 80% reduction that's in the bylaw. And 14253 allows the maximum to be based on a use that's in the table or the similarity of the proposed use to something in that table. So our bylaw has a very low parking rate, 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet for a veterinary office. Veterinary offices function more like hospitals or clinics where there's high turnover, high staff. So that rate of 5 per 1,000 and then the 80% reduction to 4 per 1,000. Both of those options are acceptable, so they could have a range from 11 to 29 parking spaces. And then bicycle, both short and long-term bicycle parking is based on vehicular parking. The floor plan does show a break room for staff, however, there would need to be an end-of-trip facility shown on that floor plan, which would be a shower and locker room for employees. On-site infrastructure, compliance is also anticipated here for water, sewer, and utilities. It's served by town water and sewer. In terms of circulation, the DRB must decide if a sidewalk easement is sufficient or if a sidewalk must be constructed along the River Cove Road frontage. So in short, the bylaw has a requirement that major developments and redevelopments construct their segments of sidewalks along existing or proposed roads. In this case, the property already has a multi-use path along Route 2A, so the DRB must decide if just providing an easement is sufficient for correcting the nonconformity or if path construction along, or sidewalk construction along River Cove Road frontage would be required. Maintenance compliance anticipated, the discretionary permit would show snow removal and storage areas and solid waste containers and screening. Chapter 18, compatibility, potential hazards, and nuisances. This is a chapter that is geared towards thinking about a commercial use in proximity to use of less intensity residential to the west and to the south. So the discretionary permit would need to include information to ensure that odor, noise, light, glare, and vibration are either not generated or will not generate an impact on the neighboring properties. So that would be showing exhaust vents, stacks, fans, and similar equipment, where they be located, ensuring that they don't direct hot air, smoke, or odor onto adjoining properties. A hazardous materials plan, if they are using hazardous materials. Hours of operation, noise, and screening for utility installations, mechanical, that type of thing. Landscaping compliance is anticipated. The site plan is showing a 10-foot setback to the south and 25 to the west. That can be adjusted. The western buffer can be reduced from 25 to 13 feet. However, the southern buffer, because it is up against residential, would need to increase from 10 to 13 feet. And both of those can be reduced up to 25% with a screening fence. Also note here that if the pedestrian sidewalk for the back entrance to the building is within that setback, that planting schedule still be able to be planted and maintained. Street trees compliance is also anticipated. Street trees shall be provided for every 40 feet along River Cove and Road and Essex Road. There are some exceptions to this standard to allow for vision triangles as well as any overhead utilities. Watershed health compliance is anticipated. The land is less than 8% slope and less than 2 acres of disturbance, so it's a low-risk development, and the erosion control plan is simpler in nature but would need to be shown at discretionary permit. Outdoor lighting, also compliance anticipated. This is a different lighting zone than typical for commercial use. It's lighting zone 2, so the illumination levels are a little bit lower. And then some notes about parking lot lighting, security lighting, to reduce the lighting levels, especially when the business is closed, to have dimming or motion sensor lights. Signage, table 25A allows a certain number of signs administratively. If they think now or in the future they might want larger or more numerous signs, then they should do a master sign plan. And window signs are never permitted in the residential zoning district. Lastly, impact fees. Additions to non-residential uses that require discretionary permit are subject to the transportation impact fee. So at discretionary permit, they would need to provide a calculation using the most current edition of the ITE manual. And in some cases, conducting a local study might be, it might be eligible for a local study if the ITE manual is not sufficient per the requirements of 45-8. So that would determine how many new trips are created, and then the impact fee would be assessed based on that. What follows is our list of recommendations. Recommendation number 1 is related to the nature and extent of a non-conforming use. Number 2 and number 3 are more standard for a pre-application. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that in-depth review. So, Scott, your turn to address the board comes up, but I have a couple of comments first.
Sure.
So I do note that, I can't read anything, my glasses. Way back June 15th of 1998, there was a variance application. So this issue that is before the board goes back more than 25 years.
I guess so, yes.
Yeah.
We only became involved in the project within the last 2 years.
That was not a
Yeah.
comment on when you got involved.
No,
It was
no,
a
I was just saying that I know as much as you about that.
A variance
Yep.
was requested and obtained 25 years ago in a for a non-conforming use. Emily touched on this. We're going to talk about the nature and extent clause.
Sure.
In the in your application. Any area in here where Emily touched on compliance anticipated is generally boilerplate. The board can certainly talk about it, but if it gets to discretionary permit, you don't go forward unless you comply with the ordinance. So
Right.
we can run through it, but really it's the nature and extent issue that's on, in front of the board.
Yeah, recommendations 2 and 3, there's nothing in there that we have issue with. We would anticipate working through anything with staff.
We would assume so.
Yep.
So, what I would like from you and your team is initially a rundown of what you plan, what you propose.
Sure.
And then on page 5, Emily's staff summary of your narrative letter, the existing and the proposed.
Sure.
I'd like to run through each one of those and have you tell me why there is no change in the nature and extent.
Sure,
Each section.
absolutely.
So, the floor is yours.
So I'll be real brief and then probably hand it over to some of the other project team members who know a lot more about running vet clinics than I do. But just real briefly in summary, our position on the nature and extent of the use is that the addition and improvements being proposed are to make the existing operation run efficiently and safely, and that the additional space is needed to do that beyond what they have available now. And then, the only other thing I would bring up in regards to the site plan, more my work, is that we are, offering a lot of improvements to the site plan to bring the site more into compliance. And we're relocating the parking completely, reducing the curb cut to a single curb cut, and making some some big improvements to bring the site more into compliance. I think it's a great idea to run through the table. I think the right person to do that is probably Jeff Clark from MD Architects, who is online here and has a much better understanding of this stuff than me. So I would hand that over to him if he's still available.
Again, this is Jeff Clark, and I appreciate it. So the practice of veterinary medicine, general statement here, obviously, has changed greatly since 1982, both in the technology that incorporates the use of staff, and that staff being registered or licensed veterinary technicians versus just an untrained staff, so to speak, in the last 25 years. Bringing tests back into house where it used to be out of house to do lab tests. Those have pretty much all come back into house. It requires a licensed vet tech to do that service. Some of the spaces we're requesting are for the safety of the staff. So they currently have the x-ray in the treatment room. It's not in a protected space, which I think we would all agree is probably not to today's standards, to say the least. They still do things like dental, but dental x-rays today weren't available 20, 30 years ago. No one was doing them. Today it's common in every practice. It's a standard of practice. And that means that x-ray is pointing in all directions, not just straight down. And you don't want that space in your treatment room as well. They are currently sharing their treatment tables to do both general treatments and the dental x-rays and dental procedures. So not only does it plug up the space in your treatment room, but it makes it very unsafe for your staff. It's two things I think that need to be set up front. It's also gone more digital. So it used to be a lot more paperwork after hours. Today, all your vet techs who manage recovering patients, just like you would have in a human healthcare, have to have access to data entry points. When you're reviewing staff records, you're not doing it on a piece of paper on the table anymore. There's video screens and monitors everywhere. The facility is old enough to be in non-compliance with ADA as well. So when you think about things like hallways, door access, door widths, those are in non-compliance for the majority of the practice. And the extension of those hallways or width of those hallways are being increased to accommodate that. The practice itself has grown over time, not because of a change in services, just because they do good work and they increase their clientele like everybody we hope they would in our communities. But it takes time to run those people through. When you only have 3 or 4 exam rooms, it only takes one person that's putting an animal down to have that moment with their animal that turns into an hour, or they go off schedule. It backs up the rest of your schedule. It causes your parking lot to expand. The parking issue is related a lot to the staffing issue. So with our vet techs, and they're averaging 1.5 to 2 vet techs today in the veterinary world for every veterinarian that's on duty. You need space for them to park. You need space for them to come to work. And I think in this practice, we've predicted 12 people on duty at one time to support 3 to 4 docs in total, 12 staff members. Though there may be 19 on board, it's because they're not all working 60-hour days. Obviously, they're 60-hour weeks. We're trying to keep those shifts down. And that's because in human healthcare, there's a concern about the health of the provider, but in veterinarians are the #1 profession for suicides in the United States. And it has to do with high pressure, literally working in boxes, barking dogs. There's a lot of pressure that goes on in these facilities. We're trying to lighten up the facility, provide daylight, provide workspace for them, and keep the animals quiet. And part of that goes back to what they call fear-free services today, where we're separating cats and dogs in waiting rooms, providing dedicated exam rooms that literally have pheromone dispensers to calm the cats and keep them calm and not smelling the dog or seeing dogs pass in front of them all the time, providing a high spot for a cat to crawl on. They don't want to be down at eye level with dogs passing by even in the reception and waiting area. So all those things are beginning of what happens in a modern veterinary clinic that wasn't there 20, 25 years ago. And I don't think anyone could have predicted it. We've been doing this since 1983. The practice itself started doing veterinary hospitals in 1957. I grew up in veterinary medicine, and the changes in the last 20 years are exponential. So modern expectations of your clients are not what they used to be. We've raised that bar with specialty practices. This practice doesn't do specialty, they do emergency services. The expectations of your client are that you're providing that first-rate care, recovery care. That's not just put them in a kennel and watch them, but staff dedicated to them and managing pain control, much like we would in a human medicine facility. On top of that, the basement floor, which is about, I think it's about 2,400 square feet, I may be wrong on that, but it's a couple thousand square feet, does not have ADA access. The stairs are non-compliant today for access. So it means that the lounge space they have downstairs, the laundry, their project manager, practice manager, all those spaces are on the floor that to me are on a dangerous stairway. To put an elevator in would kill the practice, obviously, it's a couple $100,000 for big new holes. And put an elevator in today. So we're trying to accommodate those on the main floor and use the basement floor for mostly storage needs, including the outdoor. There was a comment about using, flying if we need that storage outside for a storage unit, but they have access where they actually get their goods, dog foods, et cetera, that they sell on a retail basis through the basement door, and that would be used to access things like lawnmowers. So we don't have that outside. So it tends to clean up the outside of the practice. But there isn't a whole lot we can do with the basement. The ceiling heights are at 7 feet max. There's duct work that probably drops that to about 6'4" and cuts it in half, literally. So we're trying to get those on an upper floor. We're trying to make the space more efficient for the staff. We're trying to make staff not as tense in their daily work. We're trying to allow them to get their work done faster. We're trying to make it accessible for all clients, staff, doctors. We've increased the doctor's office. There's 6 doctors using space. I think it's at 170 square feet on the plan versus 117 currently, which is, as you can imagine, cramming 6 people in a space that small makes it dang near impossible for them to do their work at the end of the night, call back patients, get them bad news, good news, refer them to other specialty practices, etc. So generally, this practice is not expanding its services. It's not doing boarding. It's not doing grooming daycare. It's not doing specialty practices. It's doing the same thing it's always done, but it's catching up on technology, staffing, and modern ways of expectations from your clients of how you're going to treat their patients and the care that you give them.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board after that?
Oh, yeah. He gave a great argument to me to say it's time for a new building. I mean, a new building, a new facility that meets all the regulations that he says this old building can't meet. I mean, it's almost like he's arguing that he needs to be in another piece of property with a large parking lot, a modern building, and lots of room. I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other comments from the board?
I just have a question, basically. When you mentioned grieving family members and stuff with pets, how do you deal with pets that have passed?
Excuse me, we can barely hear you, I apologize, but.
When you mentioned about a room dealing with grieving family members of pets that have passed, do you have, what do you do with pets when they pass? Do you have storage for them? Do you have?
Yes, yeah, every clinic will have freezer facilities on site and they're picked up, and that's currently how it's done. The problem is you have no way for a client currently to leave that facility when they're crying without going right back through the middle of the waiting area. You're trying not to embarrass your clients.
And you don't have or intend to have any cremation services for pets on site, do you? Sorry, did you hear me? No?
Looks like
I think
they
they froze.
Froze?
They froze.
They froze.
Like everybody froze.
How much room is in the unused part of
I think it's
PetSmart?
it's that
I
computer.
think it's that because I can see it.
Messaging them.
That's another argument. I guess.
Recording in progress. Oh, their computer froze.
We think we can hear you now.
Can you hear us now?
Was this a telephone commercial? Can you hear me now?
We can see you, but can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, I can now. You just
You
came
can
and
now.
froze. Apologize. So how much of what you heard did you hear? What did you not hear, maybe?
None of it.
Oh, sorry, but, yeah, so there are freezer facilities in an animal hospital. Every animal hospital, they will have facility to store an animal till it can be picked up. They contract with a service to remove those pets. Some will go to a place that gives you the urn and provides the burial. Other will go to cremation, but that service is in place today in the hospital. That's not a change. And literally any general practice facility will have those services.
Okay. So do you do on-site cremation or?
No, nobody does anymore. It's too hard to get pollution. It doesn't make sense. There's services that will do that, so it's never done on site anymore.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, I think that there's clearly a need for this, and that it's a great service that's being provided. My question is, one, have you spoken with the neighbors? Because we are in a residential area. This is you're doing business right now as a non-conforming use, and although the procedures that you're doing may not be changing, I think the nature and the extent of those procedures could be changing, where you're talking about doubling the floor plan here to the extent that we're essentially taking up the entire residential lot. So I'm just wondering, have you talked to the neighbors, and do you agree with those statements that I just made?
I will answer part of that because we did not lead the efforts on the site design, so I will refer back. But as far as the use goes, correct in some ways. Remember I mentioned the basement, which is 2,000 square feet plus. It's going to go to storage basically. It's not like we're doubling the space. And hallways, when it comes to ADA access, doorways, all those sorts of things take up a lot of the space we're requesting. So yes, it appears to be a lot, but reality is that we're increasing the size of rooms, not the, a greater number per se. We're increasing the safety for clients and staff and access for those sorts of things. So you're not going up and down stairs, non-compliant. We've got a basement floor that it's being used, but it's not, in today's world, it would not be habitable.
Okay. Sorry. Do you expect the output, the number of patients coming through this to increase as a result of this?
I would think yes, but the reason I'm saying that is because you can actually get them turned around and create less cluster in your traffic in the parking area, right? So the sooner we can get people in, keep them on time, the better I think it'll be for the community, not worse. You don't have people driving around, parking in the streets, etc. It does not cause more commotion as far as internal noise, sound, odor, those sorts of things are probably going to improve. Like, I'm not an acoustical engineer, but I tell you the standards today we do for acoustics, exterior walls, windows, interior walls are far in excess of what was being done in the 1980s and 90s.
As far as surgical procedures, it appears to me, based on what I've seen here and what you said, that you're only doing minor procedures. And my understanding of that is that does not require overnight stay, which then we get into the whole, is that boarding or is it not boarding? Could you talk about that at all?
Yeah, so when I say overnight, it's for emergency services, right? So they've been providing emergency services and you can't always just release those patients back to the client. Sometimes you can. Sometimes it requires care overnight, and that's been the same since this practice started. They are returned or taken to the emergency center the following day upon opening. The vast majority, I can't think of a surgeon unless it was a major complication, and it's very seldom you'd have overnight from surgical procedures. They're not doing specialty practice, they're not doing orthopedics, they're literally doing soft tissue, spays, neuters, small cyst removals, tumors, those sorts of things. They come in early, they're scheduled early, they're done early in the afternoon, return home by 5:30, 6 o'clock before they close.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Yeah.
That's all.
How many amp hours are you going to be needing for this new facility versus the old facility? With all these
Amperage, you mean power?
Yeah, how many amp hours are going to have to come off of the power lines into your facility?
Paul,
It's not as much as you'd think. It's probably around 400 amps total, and I don't know what's there right now.
Would it exceed would it exceed?
Jeff, Jeff, you don't need to answer that. That's not within the purview
Okay.
of the board.
Okay,
Let's keep that one a little tighter, please.
Okay.
Thank you. We have up on the screen right now the staff summary. And this will be a little repetitive, but I'd like you to run through each section.
sure. All right, overview of the practice established. We've already gone through that, so I'm gonna blow over that for now.
This already, but we're basically getting on public record, on the nature and extent. So each section, I'd like you to address how it is or is not changing the nature and extent of the business. And, I'll prompt you if I'm not seeing or you're not answering what
Okay. The overview was this has been and will continue to be a small animal practice. No change to that is proposed. It's still going to be a small animal practice. The difference is in how those services are delivered across any veterinary practice in America. Hours of operation remain the same, no changes. Type of animals, no changes to what they are currently serving and seeing. I don't know what lister's card means, but the basement area, as I said, is 2,400 square feet. We are basically using that for storage because we're trying to get all the areas that are down there now that are inaccessible and not ADA accessible on the main floor. So if you look across, the basement level and the new addition are about 43 square feet difference. A lot of that is picked up in ADA requirements, as I mentioned before, hallways, etc. Total number of employees is 19 with 12 on duty. That is currently what they are running today. There isn't an increase in that. It's different than what was previously noted for the, can't remember what you called it, but from the 2000 or 1999 review that had occurred. But other than that, there's no change to what's currently on site. Number of examiners, they currently have 3. We're requesting 6. 2 of those are dedicated cap rooms because the practice of veterinary medicine has changed. And there is a huge emphasis on trying to reduce the stress for both patients, staff, and clients. So that's just a change in how services are being seen today in the veterinary world. And we've asked for 1 larger multi-purpose exam so that we can not plug up those exams that were being used for exams, truly exams, and the multi-purpose is a grieving room or a visitation room, can be used for exam when it's not being utilized, but it's 1 overflow exam to keep the practice moving and on time. Parking spaces, there are currently 25, we're requesting 25. I realize that not all of those were approved or vested when it was last reviewed by the city. Those comment, I would say, and as the city noted, they're within the general accepted rules for veterinary medicine. The lowest we see is typically 1 for every 200 square feet and up to a max of about 1 for every 250 square feet. Building code and ADA, roughly 50% of the existing floor area is in the inaccessible basement level that is severely height challenged, windowless, and that's true. So what we're changing that to is to make it accessible, to bring those functions to the upper floor. They aren't new, they are replacing what's in the basement and inaccessible, both from ADA and from a height challenged perspective of the ceiling height within that basement. The basement level use currently houses, as I mentioned earlier, the staff lounge, staff toilet, managerial office, general storage, laundry, mechanical, electrical, general services, prescription pet food storage. Those would all come to the upper floor with the exception of the storage, pretty much. So the rest of, well, mechanical too, we keep, the systems are down there today, down here. We may have to add new, but reality is we aren't changing that function. So while that says there's approximately 800 square feet in those rooms, the rest of that, the vast majority is the uninhabitable space that we can't accommodate and can't access even if we had an elevator. It would be tough to use without raising the floor level of the first floor or lowering the basement level. Diagnostic minor procedures such as ultrasonography, endoscopy, and cold laser therapy weren't available when this practice was built in the 80s. That's just a standard of care today for the same services that were provided by this hospital in the 80s. Technologies in human medicine, you can't practice 1980s medicine and be a successful veterinarian anymore. Your clientele expects a higher level of care. Veterinary offices are currently 6 vets sharing 3 workstations and 118 square feet. We're proposing the same number of docs, but to give them room to do their work efficiently and be able to have those contacts with clients, et cetera, without feeling stressed in a quieter environment. Dental clinics and procedures. Dental clinics used to be done by just a staff member, wasn't even a licensed vet tech at the time. X-rays weren't around. Those standards have changed as well. They're required today, if you're going to be certified, AHA, or any of the other things, you have to have dental X-rays. It's just level of care. They're now adopted throughout the practice of veterinary medicine. That hasn't changed as far as the services. It's how those services are delivered, and that's a standard of care issue. Laboratory equipment, tests can be performed in-house. In the 80s and 90s, much of our referral or lab services were referred outside. Today, they're done inside. It's a portion of the practice that's just growing because there's far less referral labs out there to do that work. But it's in the practice today. It's just segregated all over the place. It's not one convenient place for staff to get their job done. X-ray, I'm sorry, can you pull that up just a little bit? The next one down, page 6, I think. X-ray technology, the same thing. The way it is now, it's not an exam room. It's in the open treatment room, which is, not accepted today as a procedure to be doing X-rays in a room with other patients and staff members into it. So that's just bringing it into the modern age. Same thing goes with the X-ray as far as the treatment for dental treatments. You literally have to vacate the entire room to take a dental X-ray. You won't have to when we acquire that space or integrate that space. So it's a safe work environment for everybody. Fair food practice standards, that's in the last 15, maybe 10 years, where they're actually finding better outcomes, just like we are in human medicine. Like I said, everything we do in human medicine, we do in veterinary medicine. A lot of the research and sharing goes on between those two professions today, and they're finding that they have much better outcomes. They can separate the waiting rooms, exam rooms, their holding wards, even treatment facilities. We try to screen those off. Recovery wards. You don't want a dog barking next door to the cat that's freaking out trying to come out of anesthetic. So all those things are changing. It's not changing the services. It's changing how they're delivered. Electronic records, same thing. It's not changing. They're already offering, record keeping. It's just that there's no more paper. It's electronic age, and to do that, you need workstations and access for both your medical staff, doctors, as well as your licensed vet technicians that are managing staff or managing not just the treatment side of things, anesthesia input, but also monitoring clients in recovery. Can you please move that up one more time? Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate, I know it was a little bit repetitive.
That's all right.
From the board on any of those items. Obviously, we'll talk about them in closed door hearing. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Give me your, Jeff, give me your understanding on why the change in parking from 20 spaces to a requested 25 is not a change in the nature and extent.
I can probably take that one. It's like, I think, basically that it is what they have now and it is what they need. And I think over the last, probably people on this board have seen over the last 10 years or so in planning and site design, there's been much more of a push to have parking that simply fits the use rather than something that's from a book. And I think, clearly, the use that's there now uses these spots. I've been over there taking pictures and surveying the site during busy times, and the parking lot's full. So it's simply what they need and what's they've needed for years here. And I think the old numbers were probably basically based on outdated standards.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that?
When did the parking lot increase to 25?
I don't know exactly. What I highly suspect happened is that people were parking on the grass, and then that got formalized, because there is a section of gravel, you can see on the existing conditions plan, there's a portion of that parking is gravel, and my hunch, just from having seen this type of thing happen before, is as parking lots get full, people park wherever they can, and then as people park wherever they can, there's incentive to, make that situation a little better.
You understand that's not how it works?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But it might have been in 1995.
Yeah. All right.
Jay, I do have one question. Are people parking on the street then?
No, they're parking in the lot is tight but sufficient right now.
The staff brings up the issue of the sidewalk and/or the bike lane. Did anybody here have want to expand on that at all?
The only thing I would do is just take they've got the path already, the multi-path there. We just take the easement part. That would be my decision.
Dave?
I'm up in the air on that because of the sidewalk on Terry Lane. It would be nice if the sidewalk was joined to the multi-use path.
Okay.
That's the only comment I have on that.
Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I think sidewalks, if it's helpful for the pedestrians around there, and it's something that works within your plans, that they should be there.
Okay.
We talked about that before. We could live with either one of those options.
Okay. Other areas are, we're getting into compliance anticipated. Are there other areas that the board would like to discuss, or did, have you heard what you need to hear?
I'm fine.
Anybody?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Paul? Nate?
No, I think the applicant did a good, thorough job of describing what they needed to do, and I think, I may have more questions that are policy bylaw related around this as well, so.
Okay.
Nothing more.
Are there any questions from the audience? Sir, yeah, come on up, and if you'd state your name and your address. Yes. And feel free to adjust it up if you would like, or.
Thank you. So my name's Tyler Carr. I live at 14 Terry Lane, so we are the property directly west of River Cove Animal Hospital. The sign on the tomato stake announcing this meeting was really helpful because that is the first communication we had as neighbors.
Can you speak up just a bit?
Yep, I'll try. Sorry.
Thanks.
So I have notes about what everyone's concerns have been mentioned to me so far. So primarily the plan does a lot explaining of the justification of what's needed to help the practice, and it is an important service to the community. It doesn't really go into specifics about the landscaping. There's a pretty good stand of trees on the western end of the property and on the southwest corner of the property. And they're just kind of on the new plan. It just looks like they're kind of grayed out, erased. So we're wondering what if that is staying, what if that is going, what are the screening options?
So that's a good question, and we can cover that. Landscaping is part of the pre-application.
Yep.
I skipped over it simply because.
You said it was boilerplate, or?
Well, exactly, but it does not have to be boilerplate. And if you have specific questions about it, we can get them to answer.
I think the specific question is, will the plan be updated at some point prior to approval to show the nearest neighbors, any neighbors on Terry Lane, what that's going to look like, what will or won't be screened?
Yes, and if you have, yes, it will be, and yes, you can have input in that on what the landscaping, what the landscaping looks like.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean it'll go your way, but you certainly
exactly. At least we'll understand.
Certainly have input.
I think we're certainly open to working with neighbors on screening, type of screening, headlight screening, all that stuff. Be happy to do that.
Okay.
Awesome. Because it's similar, and I think it was mentioned in the staff report, the lighting, like depending on what kind of lighting came in the parking lot, that kind of have an effect.
So Williston does have a lighting ordinance. It is pretty clearly spelled out in the application with downcast lighting and requirements for when it can be on, when it can be off, and illumin level.
And that's why you mentioned the type 2, like being in a residential area is different than,
Yes.
okay,
And that is part of the challenge here.
sure. The dumpster location, it's currently not screened, and I'm just wondering if it will be. That's with the parking lot growing that much closer to our house, that's probably where it's gonna end up. It looks like there's at the end of the driveway.
All dumpsters will be required to be screened. We'd certainly do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. So the neighbors I spoke with, I guess we've been used to for 20+ years not having the sidewalk on River Cove. So it would be a nice bonus, but no one mentioned that as a primary concern that I spoke with.
So, okay, good. And it sounds like that the board is interested in that as well.
Great. Beth, you got anything? So I look forward to hearing how the project.
So this is early in the process. If this moves forward, there will be a whole nother set of hearings, much more detailed plans. You being a butter will be notified by the town of any upcoming hearings, and you are welcome to attend in person or Zoom.
Thank you.
Scott,
Am I in a butter though? Because Mr. Kimpago
Did I
has
get it? Did I get that
sidewalk
wrong?
end, and I'm across the street.
Yeah, are
you would
20
think,
I'm 14.
they would be a butters,
You're
but
not 23,
there
Hang on,
is
hold on,
a
Paul,
property,
hang
Sorry, Emily.
So they're not a
41 Terry Lane, and the screen share's pulling up, owns the strip of land along Terry Lane.
Yep.
So they are across that strip, so they won't get an abutters notification in the mail. They'll see the H sign. We upload everything online. That also plays into how the landscaping will be, because it's not frontage along a street. They're buffering to a residential property, even though it's a strip of trees, they're still buffering like it's a residential property. Those trees within the strip are on the abutting property, so their landscaping would be to the east of that flag lot. And then the sidewalk construction, we can require them to construct the sidewalk along their property frontage, but there might be a very small gap between Terry Lane unless they're able to work out something with the property owner, and that's not something that we can require
I see.
to connect it all the way through.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry, I'm Amanda Carr. I live at 14 Terry Lane. I'm his wife.
Thank you.
I just know that along River Cove down the side of the property is a culvert, I believe, so I don't know how that would work into a sidewalk plan. But yeah, it's underground water the whole way, and I think if they are just doing the one entrance, that's already taken care of, and I think going from the two entrances to the one will be actually a really good safety move on your part too, because people coming around that corner go very
Sure.
quickly and cross paths, so having the one entrance would definitely be a safer option for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Paul, did you have something you wanted to question or add?
No, I was just gonna say, feel free to send emails too. If you've got any questions, they love questions.
Okay, all right, thank you, Paul.
They're good at answering it.
Other questions from the board?
I would just encourage you to reach out to any neighbors.
Yeah, we're happy to
for
do that.
Just this discretionary permit, and, there may be some things you can work out with them to improve that site.
Right, we could look into it in regards to the landscaping, potentially connecting the sidewalk. We can do all that outreach.
Yeah, that would be great. It would help avoid some potential surprises, I think.
Scott and Jeff, anything more that you would like to add before we
No.
close this hearing?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Anything more from the board? Audience? Okay, we're gonna close this hearing at 8:15.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Okay, the board is gonna go into executive session. I'm sorry?
Is it deliberative or executive?
I can't hear you.
Deliberative?
Either,
Deliberative session or an executive session?
same thing, usually they call it deliberative, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm calling it the wrong thing.
You ready?
Yeah, you up and running? Okay, great.
because he had messed up
The
his.
Town of Williston's Development Review Board for Tuesday, September 24th, 2024 is out of deliberation. Dave, would you read HP 25-01?
Yes, the board made a decision to approve the certificate of appropriateness.
Great, thank you very much. Lisa, would you make a motion for DP 21-18.1?
Yes, is authorized by WDB 6.6.3. I, Lisa Braden Harder, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of September 24th, 2024, accept the findings of fact, conclusions of law for DP 21-18.1 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Paul seconds it.
No further discussion.
No further discussion, all right. Nate? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott Riley abstains and has recused himself from this hearing. David?
Yay.
4 yeas, 1 abstention, motion carries. Pre-app for DP 25-01 River Cove Animal Hospital. Nate, would you make the motion, please?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Nathan Andrews, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendation of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of September 24th, 2024, accept the recommendations for DP 25-01, and authorize this application to move forward to discretionary permit review. We will be amending the list of recommendations with the addition of recommendation H, identify sewer usage and capacity for vested approvals, existing conditions, and proposed conditions.
And that was in section 1.
Mm-hmm.
In section 1, and in section 2, we are amending condition C, recommendation C to read WDB 15 the discretionary permit should include sidewalk construction along the River Cove Road property frontage per WDB 15.2.
Great, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
David seconds it. All in favor, Nate?
Nay?
Yay or nay?
Nay?
Nay. Paul?
Nay.
Lisa?
Nay.
Scott Riley's a nay. David?
Yay.
Yay. 4 nays, 1 yay. Motion doesn't pass. Motion doesn't pass. APP 25-01, the hearing was rescheduled for the 22nd. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of 8/27? Lisa makes the motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Paul, second. All in favor?
Yeah.
Yay.
5 yeas, no nays, motion carries. Anything else anybody would like to bring before the board? I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:13 and 30 seconds.
So moved.
So moved. 35 seconds. Okay. Thank you, everybody. That was interesting.
Yeah.